All right. Good morning, everyone. Actually, I see a few faces that I saw an hour ago. So hopefully you got a chance to take a breath and maybe get a new tea. But welcome to our session on the empathy and self-care. That's what we're actually going to have some fun doing today. So just before we actually get going, wanted to share a couple of Zoom keeping tips and a couple of Mural tips, which is something we're going to use. I know for those of you who were in the last session, you were like Mural ninjas. You were already ahead of the game, knowing how this all works. But for anyone who maybe is new to the session, hasn't used Zoom before or hasn't used Mural, just want to share a couple of tips, a couple of Zoom keeping tips around the concept of when somebody's speaking, if you can make sure that your mic is actually off. The other really important one is in terms of your bandwidth for your computer. If you can have your cameras on, we love seeing faces just like this, but if not, we totally understand. Really do recommend that you maybe only have the Zoom and one tab open, which will be the Mural in your browser, so that you're not actually having any lag issues either with the presentation or with the actual Mural itself. We will share the Mural link in a few minutes with you once we get going, and that's where a lot of the workshop's actually going to take place today. The other piece that we want to make sure that you know is that in terms of interaction, one of us will always be monitoring the chat. So if you do have questions that are coming up, if you're comfortable and you want to pop on your mic, that's wonderful. But if you'd rather drop it in the chat, we'll make sure that we're watching, either address it immediately or something that we can circle back to at the end as well for a little Q&A, where we'll try and make sure that we address any questions that you might have. And so to kick off our session today, I'm going to toss it over to Kate to start us off with a land acknowledgement.
Thanks, Clinton. Good morning, everybody. Georgian College acknowledges that all campuses are situated on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe people. The Anishinaabe include the Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi nations, collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. Georgian College is dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and is committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect with all First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people. Throwing it back to you, Clinton.
Awesome, Kate. Thank you so much for that. So team, in the chat box right now on Zoom, I'm going to drop the Mural link. And so for those who haven't navigated to this before, you can actually just click on this link and it'll bring you to the Mural that we're going to be using for today's session. We'll give you a chance to get set up. As we watch some people drive through, there's a couple of Mural tips if you're brand new to Mural that we want you to know about. One of the first ones we always like to know about is the importance of being able to zoom in and out. This is such a key feature of Mural. And so if you have a scroll pad, either a touch pad that you can scroll on or a mouse that you can actually scroll, that'll help you kind of get closer in and closer out. And that's really, really key, so that you're not creating a sticky note that's actually going to cover the entire Mural. So that you can actually zoom in and zoom out of that. The other way of doing that is, if you prefer just on your keyboard, you can hit Control plus or minus. That'll bring you in and out zooming. And then in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see there's a move mode little hand, as well as a little slider, and that'll help you zoom in and out too. So those are three different ways of being able to zoom in and out of the Mural. On the right-hand side of the Mural is where your outline is, and that's where you can actually go directly. It'll take you directly to that area in the Mural. So if you find that you're getting lost and you're not entirely sure, you can always click on one of those. It'll bring you to the area that we're actually working in. I can already see all the cursors going, people starting on question number 1. Told you, Mural ninjas, I love it. But for those of you who maybe get a little overwhelmed with all those cursors moving, one little tip is you can actually hover over your icon at the bottom, and that will enable you to click something that says, "Don't show me cursors." And sometimes that's a little more visually appealing, that you don't see all the little mice running around. It'll just show you yours. You'll still be able to see your teammates' post-it notes that they actually put on and their various contributions. And so with those Mural tips sort of out of the way, I'm going to pass it over to the fabulous Laura Koza to kick us off.
Yes, hello everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm so grateful to share space with you and work with Kate to host this conversation around empathy and self-care, and how does that show up in our life. And sort of the next hour-ish, this session goes until noon, we're going to be talking about what is empathy and self-care, and what are some myths around it that we have, and what is some unlearning we have to do. So how does that show up in our life, and how does that relate to change making? So that's sort of our goal for the next hour. And yeah, really hopefully have this really riveting conversation. Something I always like to say at the beginning of a session is I think I'm pretty amazing. I think I have a lot of goodness to offer, and I know that Kate is incredible and has a ton of goodness to offer. But no one really wants to hear us speak without any interruption for an hour straight. So these sessions are really built to be collaborative. They're really built to be engaging. So please engage in whatever way that suits you. I heard a phrase this week that I really liked that sort of embodies stretch, not tear. We invite you. These conversations can be a little bit vulnerable. They can be a little bit emotion provoking, and that's the point. And we want to talk about these emotions. We invite you to stretch a little bit out of your comfort zone, try something new without tearing. So lots of ways to engage. The mural I always like to share in this session is anonymous. So typically you would come in as like visiting owl or visiting shrimp. So I don't believe we see your names as you do that. If I'm wrong, I apologize. So it's a little bit of a nicer way if you want to see something a little bit more vulnerable without that face behind it. You can say that, and I know it doesn't track post-it notes. So it might show it sort of your name as you're doing a post-it note, but once it's up, you can't see who wrote that. So no stress. Something I do like to offer that if that's just a little bit more in your comfort zone, then that's a great way to engage as well. And yeah, Kate, I guess I should introduce myself. So my name is Laura Koza. I work for the Center for Changemaking and Social Innovation. My role at the center is to help students, staff, and faculty identify how they are change makers, and then work to build up the skills and mindsets of change making for those individuals. So I am really grateful and honored to be here today to talk about empathy as a change making skill and how that shows up in our own self-care. And I will let Kate introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kate Henry, the Mental Health and Wellbeing Coordinator at Georgian. So I work with the manager of the mental health strategy at Georgian. We've created a mental health and wellbeing strategic plan for all of our students and employees. It's really just a big fancy way to say that, you know, Georgian mental health and wellbeing is a priority at Georgian, and we are here to do lots of different things to support our community members, whether it's through workshops, online tools and resources, providing system navigation, lots of different things. So what I'm here today to offer is lots about self-care and really how self-care really is connected to empathy. There is no empathy without self-care, and there is no self-care without empathy. So really excited to spend the next 50-ish minutes with all of you.
Yeah, that's so good. I love that. We're going to dive into that relationship between the two as we go. And thanks for front loading that. So good. I love this warm-up question. What do you think change making is? Because as we dive into some of these competencies, it's really getting to recognize that change making is such an individual act. So some of these answers, like you guys are total change makers and totally get it. And I'm so grateful for that. I see one, making a positive change in our society, connecting with others and improving our own skills, the ability to make a difference with your voice, one step at a time. I love that. With innovative thinking makes a better society. Amazing. This is so beautiful and I love this. So thank you. And I always offer sort of the definition of change making for those who like more tactical things is one who desires change in the world and gathers knowledge and resources to make that change happen. What I like to offer is that empathy is a knowledge and a practice and a skill set that we can build with time and energy. So being able to recognize what empathy is, how it shows up with us is part of change making. So that's so great. And I will let Kate sort of talk to that question. What are we bringing to this space today?
Awesome. So yeah, I see people have started to add some notes in here as well. So my attention and open mind and passion for gaining new knowledge, creativity. I love all that. And I love the little GIF enthusiasm. That's so great as well. So, and positive vibes. Really,
understanding and honoring what we are bringing to this space is key when we're about to dive into some of these conversations around empathy and self-care. There are such individualized processes and understandings. Self-care looks so different for everybody. So that's really why we want you all to have the opportunity to kind of check in with yourself and see what you're bringing to this space as we dive into some of this content. So thanks for going ahead and adding some stuff into that area of the mural.
Yeah, so good. And I've actually noticed you guys are like true mural ninjas because you're all stepping ahead and filling out these things, which is fantastic. So we're getting lots of really good insights. So what we might do is we might pull everyone to this question up here for those who haven't answered it yet, and answer the question, when you think of empathy, what does that mean for you? How does empathy show up in your life? If you were to define empathy or talk about an experience of empathy, what does that look like for you? We've got some amazing.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. I didn't get a chance to get on the link to answer that, so I'm listening to you guys and going along. I can definitely answer this way if this is accurate.
I'd love to hear you, and we'll make sure to put that link again too.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So to me, empathy is again understanding. For me, like if you understand, then you're willing to listen.
Yeah, love that. Such an important piece. And what does understanding look like, and how does that make us feel? And I love that language around understanding. Thank you for that.
No problem.
Yeah, so good. And I see some other stuff on the mural that I'd like to honor too, which is understanding different perspectives, which is quite similar, and seeing where someone is and meeting them there. I love that. There's so much beauty in that. Understanding other people's
Hello.
Yeah.
Hi, I also wanted to share something about empathy. For me, empathy is sharing feelings with others.
So beautiful. Thank you so much. And I love that you said feelings and emotion, because that's such a big part of what empathy is. So thank you for that. Does anyone else want to share verbally?
Hi, my name is Parth. And for me, empathy is to understand and share the feelings with others, sorry.
So good. Yeah, to understand and share those feelings with others. And I really like that language, and we'll get back to it for sure, but such an important piece to share those feelings with others.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, I would say that empathy is getting into someone else's shoes and seeing what they're seeing.
Yeah, totally. Thanks, Scott. I love that. Yeah, being able to see what other people see. I think I hear a mic on. Is there someone else like that?
Empathy to me is holding space for a person.
So good. Yeah, holding space, such an important piece. Beautiful. Thank you.
I really love that language, holding space for someone.
So good. What I might do now is I want to transition. I want to share. Oh, this is amazing. Sorry, I just noticed we got the closed captions on, and it's doing really well. So that's amazing. I won't let myself be distracted by that, but what I will like to share is that there is a video that I have watched approximately 1 million times. And every time that I watch it, I learn something new from. And this was one video that I was introduced to and was really groundbreaking for me when it came to understanding and communicating about empathy and practicing empathy as a skill. So what I am going to do is I'm going to screen share. So I like to warn people that I'm very medium with technology. So be gentle with me as I get my screen set up to share and share this video. And hopefully we'll have a conversation after about what are your gut reactions? What came up for you? What was new? What was old? Was there anything that really spoke to you from this video? The other thing I always like to invite is that whenever I share something and whenever we get into these sessions on Zoom, I always like to say they're exactly what you put into them. So by sort of sitting back, putting your phone away and totally engaging and letting the video wash over you, I think it's a really beautiful experience. So that would be my invitation. However, I recognize that not everyone has that space, so no stress, but just wanted to share that. Okay, screen share. Can everyone see my screen? Okay.
So what is empathy and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, I'm down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. I had a, yeah. And we do it all the time because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now. I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that video. For me, it's always a really good reset to say, okay, what are the qualities and how does it show up for me? And again, my invitation is to ask, how did it show up for you? What came up for you? Is there anything you'd like to share? You can do that in the chat, on Mural, or verbally. That was lovely. Yeah.
I particularly loved how they mentioned that don't try to make it better for someone by providing a solution rather than just be. Like the emphasis on these 2 words, just be. That's very powerful.
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing up that point. And what I like to offer, the first time I heard this video, I immediately felt this sense of guilt for all the times I'd done it wrong, all the times I tried to fix it, all the times I had tried to give a sympathetic response instead of an empathetic response. So I like to share this because it's so important to recognize that you can only know what you know at the time. So if that is resonating, if you are feeling that guilt of all the times you've tried to fix it instead of just letting it be, recognize that you were just trying to help and you were doing the best with the tools that you had in your toolbox to make someone else feel better. So thank you so much for bringing that up. It's such an important piece.
There's lots of great answers in the chat as well. I'm reading here. The silver lining stuck out for some, having a answer or trying to solve the problem and not just listen, and explaining the differences between the two, and some folks not actually recognizing that there was a difference. That was a big one for me too, actually, when I first learned about empathy and specifically watched this video.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, I think I love this conversation about non-judgment too that's happening in the chat. Empathy requires us to let go of our judgments, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but that means outwardly and inwardly. And we will also talk a little bit more about that, but really, really beautiful insights. And I 100% agree. I think Brene Brown is my hero. I'm pretty sure I own every book she's ever written, and my library keeps getting bigger by the minute. So lots of love for Brene Brown in my life too. Awesome. Yeah, and the only other thing I would like to offer is this connection piece. Like, empathy is about this connection. And how does that show up, and what makes us feel good, and what makes us feel connected, and how do we offer that for others and ourselves? So that conversation of, oh my gosh, I don't know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me, is the root of connection. It builds that trust. It builds that love towards another person to say, you can tell me anything and I'm going to be here for you. Thank you all for your such beautiful comments towards empathy. And yeah, I think, you know what, no, okay, just because it's here, I'm changing the route on the fly here, but what I do want to share is in the mural, I'm going to summon you all. Normally I don't share this till a little bit later, but when Brene Brown sat down and actually did some research on empathy, she was able to identify 4, she calls them empathy skills, but basically 4 qualities of an empath. And this is so important because for me, it's a little bit of a check-in and to say, okay, how is this making me feel and what's showing up for me so I can continue on this journey of exploring my own empathy. So the first one is perspective taking. So the ability to see the world as other people see it and recognizing other people's truth is their truth. So you don't need to recognize that their truth is the truth or your truth, but it's so important to recognize that their truth is truth to them. It's meaningful to them. Second one is staying out of judgment, which was said so beautifully earlier. I can't remember by who, but was taken up so beautifully earlier. And this is a hard one because we all really like to judge, myself included, whether that's ourselves or others. Comparing and judging is a really common practice in how we show up. So making sure that we are staying out of judgment. And then the last 2 kind of go together, which the first one is the ability to recognize emotion, and then the ability to communicate emotion. So 4 really important skills around empathy that I think it's so important to cultivate as we continue this practice. Kate, I will pass the mic over to you to talk about self-care.
Awesome. So just going back up, and I'll try to summon you. I'm new to that part. We'll see how it goes. Let's try. Summon. Did I do it? Yay. Okay. Anyway, so I see some people have started to answer this question. What is self-care? So thank you for going ahead and adding some of those notes here. If anyone wants to add in the chat and come off mute, I welcome that again. But so we have self-care is supposed to make you feel refreshed. I love that, fill your bucket back up. This weather is certainly doing that for me. I know that. Loving and caring about our own mind and body. I love that one. Being able to take a day for yourself to do things. I love that. Putting yourself first when needed. That's a huge one. And I think sometimes a lot of us find that to be selfish. And I'll throw that over to Laura here soon, because she has a really great, taking back the word selfish tangent she likes to go on that I personally love to listen to. So we'll go back to that, I promise. Stepping back and getting back into the zone. Love that. And does anybody want to come off mute? I'll just stop talking. So I welcome that as well. Personal care, that's really great. So self-care really does mean a lot of things, and it could be different things to everybody. What we know is that self-care is so individualized. What works for us maybe doesn't work for other people. But what we know is that self-care is really taking action to improve one's own physical, emotional, mental, and or spiritual well-being, and really to maintain that. So at Georgian, we really like to look at self-care from a holistic approach, taking care of all of our areas of our well-being. When we developed our strategic plan, we had the opportunity to learn from our Indigenous community and our colleagues in our Indigenous Resource Center, and they really shared their wisdom around a holistic approach to our well-being. So we've tried to really embed that into our self-care conversations. So you'll see when we go over to look at, the different types of self-care and different ideas that we kind of look at these different buckets. But what we know is that actually a lot of the activities that we do really pull on these different areas in our own way. So self-care and selfish are so confusing. I think that's a gray area between them. Yes, I agree. You know what? That's a great point. I'm gonna, Laura, do you wanna share your wisdom on kind of taking back the word selfish? Because I love it. So you're welcome to share.
I don't know that it's as much of wisdom as it is rants by Laura Koza, but I totally agree with, I think, what everybody has said. And I think the perfect spark to this rant is there's a post-it note in there that says self-care is loving yourself. And that is the root of self-care. It's choosing yourself. And when we think of selfish, typically, if you guys are able, write a word in the chat when you hear selfish. What's like typically traditionally comes to your mind? Ew, yeah, totally. Rude, yeah. Not caring about anyone else, mean, yeah. Not caring about anyone around you, annoying. Narcissist is one that comes up, insensitive, self-centered. Yeah, selfish has this really terrible connotation. Annoying, self-centered, ignorant, subjective, mean, totally. All of these. Yeah, selfish, egotistical is a really terrible word. When we hear selfish, and this is what comes to mind, none of us want to be selfish. We don't want to be associated with these things. But what I like to offer is that taking care of yourself and loving yourself is selfish, and that's good. If we can be selfish so that we can take care of ourselves, we can love ourselves, we can put ourselves first, we are giving ourselves the best equipment possible to take care of those around us. I would offer that narcissist or egotistical would be a different language altogether, but this concept of selfish is about just filling our own cup so that we can then have the ability to pour out and offer this compassion and care and empathy and love outwardly. So there's no problem in putting ourselves first. In fact, we are the best versions of ourselves and can do the best work when we put ourselves first. Kate.
I love it every time. It's my favorite. So, and I think it really ties beautifully into this image I have here on the mural. And this is from a TED Talk that I found that's really great. And I'm not sure if Quentin, if you have the link, if you're able to put it in the chat, folks can save it and watch it another time. It is 7 minutes, so we're not going to share it in here because it's a bit too long, but it's from the perspective of a student. So, you know, being students, I really think that it's so powerful. But this student in the TED Talk shared this picture that we have here, and that's what you typically see if you're flying, and they have that little card pamphlet in the front pocket of the seat, and they tell you that, you know, if oxygen masks drop down, you're always supposed to put it on you before you put it on the person next to you. So what this person in this TED Talk says, and I'll just share a direct quote from it, is that the oxygen mask is a lot like self-care. So we all have friends, we all have family members, maybe classmates, that we want to be empathetic towards. But if we don't take care of ourselves and we don't put on our oxygen mask first, then we don't have the capacity to help those people that we care for and really be empathetic towards those people. So that's what it's telling us, that self-care is not selfish, it's actually necessary in order to take care of ourselves. So if we look at the oxygen mask from a sense of empathy and self-care, putting on that oxygen mask is being empathetic towards ourselves and engaging in these self-care activities to really refuel ourselves so that we can care and be there for those around us and really show up for those people in an empathetic way. So really tying together self-care and empathy and why we're here. So I really loved how this student shared this this kind of image, because I think it's one that many of us are aware of, and it really does speak volumes to how we need to sometimes put ourselves first.
May I add something?
Yeah.
So I would like to add that we shouldn't limit ourselves to these words like selfish or self-centered, because at every point of our time we are selfish on a certain level. So if we go one level deep, or if we go 1 degree down, it's not about 0 or 1, it's not about black and white, right? It's as it is famously said that life is not in black and white, it lies in the grays. So it is not about being selfish, because every one of us is selfish at every one point of time. It's that when other is selfish at some point, we judge them, and when we are selfish at one point of time, we don't judge them, and we say that our intentions are right, or we are thinking for ourselves. It is self-care. So it really is it's more than a word on a binary level, 0 or 1. I think we should think as it as a spectrum. Like it is okay to be selfish, but at what level we are going, we should be aware about, like the level we are going to be selfish, if you know what I mean. Yeah, that's how I think we should think, because if we define ourselves by level, then it is at one point of time in our life, it is very difficult to think, and it is very difficult to separate ourselves from these kind of words. So yeah, that's
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, Abhishek. I think that was really beautifully put. It's so important to remember that these conversations really do live on a spectrum. When we talk about things like self-care and we talk about mental health in general, we always talk about how it doesn't just sit still, it moves around. So I really think that's so important for all of our language. So thank you for sharing that. I think that was really powerful.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
I want to add something that I think self-care is about priority. One needs to prioritize himself or herself first, because it's our body, right? So we need to care for ourselves first and then think about others. That's what it is. We need to prioritize ourselves first.
Yeah, I love that. And you hear often quotes like, you can't pour from an empty cup. And some people, you know, make fun of me because they're like, that's so cheesy, but it's not. It's so true. We can't pour from an empty cup. We can't give to others. We can't give to others, be empathetic towards others if our bucket or our cup is at zero. So I agree completely, but it does exist in this kind of spectrum. It moves around, right? So I really love what all of you are saying, and I think it's so powerful. And I just thank you for being so engaging. I think it makes this session so meaningful.
I would also like to add something. I am surprised that the word boundaries hasn't showed up yet. Selfish and boundaries, keeping boundaries with the people we live, our family, friends, relationships. That's what self-care to me is, at least, that placing that distance maybe, but in a healthy way, if that makes sense.
That makes so much sense. And I love that. I always bring up boundaries when I talk about self-care. So I just summoned you all to the types of self-care, and you'll see boundaries is listed in the list as one of the buckets. And so you're one step ahead of the game. I love it. You could help facilitate this session with us.
I would love to.
One of the biggest pieces when I talk about self-care with people that a lot of folks don't recognize is boundaries. So thank you so much for sharing. It's so important, and it's difficult, but it's difficult to do sometimes. I recognize that, but it's so important. So I'm not going to go too much longer on that, but there's lots of different things we can do to practice self-care, and Nikita, boundaries is definitely one of those. All right, Laura.
Yeah, so beautiful. And like, I'm having a hard time moving on because this is such a gorgeous conversation. So thank you all for people who have contributed and shared their insights. And I just find it so beautiful. The universe always has something entailed, that it seems each one of these conversations leads to sort of the next level and the insights. And I loved sort of what, I hope I say your name right, Abhishek and Nikita said about it's the spectrum, like recognizing that we live on the spectrum around these topics. And just because we're saying, make sure to fill your own cup, doesn't mean that your life will allow your cup to be 100% full at every time. What we're really saying is make sure that your cup doesn't get dry. Make sure that it's never at zero, and start to recognize some of those early warning signs of when it gets below into that dangerous zone. And yeah, how does that show up for you? So really, really beautiful insights from everybody, and I'm so grateful for them. Thank you. What we want to do, and we don't have a ton of time because we've had such a beautiful conversation, and I think this is better, so that's okay, is we want to host a conversation about sort of the connection of empathy and self-care. So what I am going to do is I am going to summon you all. And I always find, side note, the word summon, like we talk about these beautiful, empathetic, self-care, lovely emotional things, and then I say, I'm going to summon you. It seems like such a harsh word for this topic, but that's okay. I invite you to look at this piece. This is one that I'm actually going to ask you not to engage with yet. You will have an opportunity to, but this will be a group's section, so we don't want to fill it up for them. We want to leave it nice and clean for them to engage with at their time. The invitation that I have for you is, in a moment, we're going to split you into breakout rooms, which the wonderful Quentin Evans is sorting out in the back end. Thank you, Quentin. You'll probably be in that room, let's say, for about 7 to 8 minutes. And in this room, we want you to have a conversation about, when you think about your own self-care practices, what do you say, think, do, and feel? So, things you might say: I'm going to take a walk today. Things you might do: skip your walk and continue doing work. I'm making this up, but actually I want you to write on the post-it note like exactly what you would say using the language. I am, I will, this is, whatever. Same with the things that you think, feel, and do. So I want you to have that conversation. And then as you start to have this conversation, I want you to think about, what role does self-care play when empathizing with others? If anything for that comes up for you, I want you to put those Post-it notes in that circle in the middle. Does everybody understand the ask of what we are inviting you to do? Spend the next 7-8 minutes doing. Okay, so quickly what I will say is Quentin's gonna figure out the breakout rooms and I'll let him do a little spiel, but on the right-hand side of the mural, you might see an outline. If you don't, I hope that you do. I shouldn't have used the word might. I should have used the word should. You should see an outline. You'll see step 1, 2, 3. If you scroll down, you'll see room 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. So when you go into the breakout room, you'll go into room 6. Like, let's say you're being invited to room 6. I want you to click the room 6 button on the outline. It will take you to your own space on the mural where you can have that conversation. Another super important thing is that when you get the invitation to a breakout room, you need to hit accept. If you don't hit accept, you won't go. Quentin, do you mind sending them away or giving them any last words of wisdom that they might need?
It is open, and just as Laura was saying, just make sure you know what room that you're in so that you can figure it out on the mural outline, which canvas you're going to work on.
Lisa's back in her room. Everybody's timer just went off.
Little doorbell. Welcome back.
I think we're still waiting. This room should have a good.
I just had a quick question, Laura.
Yeah.
Okay, I wanted to say this is a great program, great change maker, and especially in this COVID, we all need this. And I think this is a very positive come together.
Thank you for your
So much.
Thank you, guys.
I was just saying in the break that you 72 human beings are exactly what my heart needed today. So thank you all for being your beautiful selves and showing up and engaging with us, because these sessions are just what you make them. And you guys have all made them so beautiful. And I'm
It's amazing how when we see you, instead of just seeing your name, it really puts a face and it really puts a personality. And that's where I'm saying, even though it is COVID, it is technology based, everything learning, but having that opportunity to see faces really makes it a huge, huge, huge comeback as like, you know, we're not alone.
You're gonna make me tear up. I'm having one of those days where I'm today. So.
No, because that's how I know a lot of us feel that way, and I just want to be a voice that we're not alone.
Thank you. From the bottom of my heart, I so appreciate that. And
no problem, no problem. I just want to, like, really being a mom of 4 and being a full-time student and being with technology is first time. I'm not a tech, but yes, it is helping me to be a better person at tech. But I'm just saying the biggest thing is to be positive in your mind, and self-care is another key to it that makes you more positive.
So beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing.
No problem, no problem. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for being here. And not just thank you, but thank all of you for being here. Such an important conversation that I don't think we authentically hold enough. We talk about self-care so much about a glass of wine and a bubble bath, and not about connecting with ourselves in that physical, emotional, social, and spiritual way, as well as holding empathy for ourselves and others. Recognizing that empathy is that ability not to have judgment. So just so important and such a good conversation. So thank you all for being part of it. And unfortunately, we don't have a ton of time, but I do want to open the floor for maybe 3 minutes. If there's any really good insights people want to share about their conversation in the room, I would love to hear them.
It's not from the conversation, but I really like to share. So when we talk about self-care, I think that knowing yourself first is more important than self-care. So uh, it is rightly said that first you have to know yourself first and get into questions like who am I and something. Then you will have a greater understanding of who you really are, and then you can have a better insight and all these things like empathy and self-care, and you can connect with people well. Yeah, that's the only thing that I want to share. Thank you.
I love that. I love that so much. And I think what's so important there is that I don't think those exist separately. I think that journey of self-awareness and learning about ourselves is an act of self-care. So I think that what you're saying is so, again, so powerful and so true, and that I wouldn't think of them separately. I would think of that process as actually being an act of self-care. That journey. So thank you for sharing.
Anyone else want to share? You don't have to. I just thought we would make some space if you do. Yeah,
Sorry, Laura. I was just going to say, you know, often it's so much easier to take care of everybody else around us and not ourselves, but especially in the field I'm in, early childhood education, it's easy to do. But to give to children and the people around you, and your family and your coworkers, you really do need to take care of yourself so that you can give to others.
So thank you. Thank you for that. It's such an important and beautiful piece. And I think the thing that we don't say enough is this is hard work. Like, yes, it's all ushy gushy and we talk about how good it makes you feel and why it's so important. But the honoring there is that it's really, really hard work to be selfish and to really, to Abhishaki's point, to be on that journey of learning to love yourself and dating yourself and getting to know yourself. And it's really, really hard work.
Yes. I was going to say something about that. I was going to say that sometimes when you're putting others before you, it can be somewhat of a challenge to find the time to be selfish and just think about yourself just for a bit.
Yeah, completely. I know. I think it's important to recognize that these conversations are so powerful, and what we're saying, I think everyone can hear the importance of it and all agrees and values it. But to not dismiss that it doesn't make it easy. It can still be so hard to do that. And I think what you're saying speaks volumes to setting boundaries, what we were talking about earlier. And again, it's not an easy process. So I think that's really important to acknowledge as well.
I would like to add a quote that is constantly coming to my mind, which is "as within, so without." That is, then the outer world is a reflection of your inner world. And in fact, if you guys can take some time and Google this, "as within, so without," the whole concept is so enlightening. It's just amazing. I thought I'd just add that.
Yeah, it's like you see what you are, right?
Exactly.
Thank you. So beautiful. I'm just noticing the time, and I really want to make sure that we're honoring people's time today, as well as sort of this learning in this process. So for those who are familiar with it, a little tradition that I always like to end off my workshops with, you might have known now because I see some familiar faces, is this concept of intentionality. So recognizing that we only have about 2 minutes, I'm just going to introduce it and you can take it if you'd like. But on the step 4 of the mural, I'm going to summon you all. You will see some intention cards. I see intentionality as a bridge from connecting learning to action. So my invitation for you is to think about and write down how you will act with empathy and self-care and self-love in the coming times and in the coming days. So however that looks for you, if you want to take an intention card and write the action you're going to do to fulfill that, if you would just like to write your own intention on how you want to do that somewhere. The only thing I would offer is that it's so important to put your name on it, because we know that when we put our name on something, we take ownership of it and are more likely to do it. So if that's something that resonates, I will leave that one alone. If you'd like to do it, the invitation is there. And last but not least, you guys are just an incredible group of human beings that I know I can speak for the three of us are so grateful to share space with this morning. So thank you all for showing up, and not just physically showing up and being here and being there, but genuinely showing up with your hearts and your souls and your vulnerability and courage to host these conversations and reflect about what this means to you. If you want to know more about these topics, if you are interested in connecting, both Kate and I have passions in this areas, and I know we'd be more than happy to reach out, or more than happy to connect with anyone who reaches out. Our emails are classic Georgian emails, laura.koza, kate.henry@georgiancollege.ca. So reach out, connect, spread the love inward and outward to continue on this journey.
Thanks so much, everybody. It was so great connecting with all of you.
Thank you.
If anybody wants a question or something, feel free to hang on, and we'll hang on for another 5 minutes. But otherwise, have a great day.
Thank you guys. Have a good
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. It was great. Awesome program. Thank you.
Thanks, Lori. Take care.